This episode of the Craftsman Online podcast is sponsored by Bricks Masons. From elegant Masonic rings that showcase your commitment to our craft to finely crafted regalia and apparel that honor your tradition, Bricks Masons delivers quality and craftsmanship that truly stands out. Shop now at bricksmasons.com and use promo code CRAFTSMAN, that's CRAFTSMEN, to receive free shipping with your first order.
The comments, opinions, and views shared during this program are of those individual Freemasons and do not reflect the official position of a Grand Lodge, concordant body, appendant body, Masonic Authority, or craftsmanonline.com. Welcome to the Craftsman Online podcast, the only 5-star rated Masonic podcast endorsed by the Grand Lodge of New York. And now your host, Worshipful Brother, Michael Arce.
Hey, welcome back. Make sure your seatbelt is securely fastened because we're going to do a little road tripping on this episode of the Craftsman Online podcast. Yeah, a Masonic summer road trip. We're going to start by visiting the Scottish Rite Masonic Museum and Library and then take a drive to the Livingston Library of the Grand Lodge in New York. So first, let's welcome in our guest, Hillary Stelling Anderson, who's the Director of Collections and Exhibitions at the Scottish Rite Museum and Library, to give us a virtual tour of the popular Masonic Hall of Fame exhibition. Welcome to the Craftsman Online podcast, Hillary.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Let's kind of start first with the Scottish Rite Masonic Museum and Library. I think it might surprise a lot of Masons, especially in the Northern Masonic jurisdiction, that this exists. Where is it? How can we go see it? Who do you have to know to visit the museum?
You don't have to know anybody at all. All are welcome. We're located in Lexington, Massachusetts, and we share a building with the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry in the Northern Masonic jurisdiction. So it is a great place to visit. It's a historic area, so you can make a trip out of it if you want to come from afar.
So not only is this a museum on Freemasonry and Scottish Rite Freemasonry, but I imagine there's probably a great depth of American history that's going to be featured there because of the location and where everything was happening in that part of the country as America was literally being born. What are some of the neat research projects or study that your team is working on?
Well, we work on all kinds of things. So the Scottish Rite Masonic Museum and Library is both a museum and also a library and archives. But we all work together, and we're all under one umbrella. So we have material related to all those kinds of areas of collecting. We also have exhibition spaces, and one is the Masonic Hall of Fame, Extraordinary Freemasons in American History. That's that exhibition. We have other exhibitions throughout the building. And then we're also always collecting. So we collect by gift and purchase. We're always looking out for interesting objects and materials that can help us tell the story of Freemasonry and fraternalism. So we're interested in not only Freemasonry, but also fraternalism, Oddfellows, other fraternal organizations. We have a big umbrella. And as you pointed out, we also look at American history. So there's a lot of different material. And I'll just also add that we are the caretakers of the collection of the Grand Lodge of Masons in Massachusetts. So that's another resource that we bring to the table.
Okay. I'm just thinking of like all of the famous Freemasons that would possibly be featured there and some of the cool items. So I'm thinking for sure there's got to be things about George Washington. There's got to be things about Paul Revere, some of our early founding fathers from that part of the country.
Sure, of course. So if you're speaking about the Masonic Hall of Fame, Extraordinary Freemasons in American History, that particular exhibition, both, no surprise, I'm glad we're all sitting down, George Washington and Paul Revere are in the Hall of Fame, and we do have material related to them. We're very lucky right now because a lodge in Massachusetts has loaned us their Paul Revere jewels. We have another set of Paul Revere jewels on view in the museum in another exhibition. And when I say Paul Revere jewels, I mean jewels that it's documented that Paul Revere made. We also have a ladle that he made for a lodge, that was later given to a lodge on view in the exhibition, as well as graphic reproductions of things he wrote. In the Hall of Fame, other well-known and sort of lesser known but extremely accomplished Freemasons that have played a significant role in their fields of endeavor. And the exhibition itself is I think of it as it's like a core, and the core is the Hall of Fame, where we introduce the 20 inductees to the Hall of Fame, and then all around it, the envelope is an introduction to the history of Freemasonry in the United States. And that's because not everyone that comes to visit us brings knowledge of Freemasonry to the table. And sometimes they're curious, or sometimes they're Freemasons, but they'd like a refresher. And so we tell that story using objects in the collection as well. So it's kind of two exhibitions in one.
Now, you had talked about some of the famous Freemasons, or I don't want to use the term famous Freemasons, but some of the distinguished brothers that are featured in the Hall of Fame. There's 20 of them. Without getting into each individual, who is a handful of the few that we should know more about that maybe aren't top of mind to a lot of people that come visit the museum? They'd be surprised to see or hear this person's story.
Well, I think that's a good question. There are a few. Again, these are all people who made a real contribution to their fields of endeavor. And so no one is a person that you've never, ever, ever heard of, but maybe you might not have known that he was involved in Freemasonry. So of those examples, some of the people that I learned about working on this project that I didn't know very much about include John Lejeune, who was sometimes called the greatest Marine of all time. He was sort of instrumental in basically running the U.S. Marines during, before and during World War I, and he was a very interesting figure, and put a lot of value on Freemasonry because he thought it was such a democratic institution. Also, the story of the Mayos, who founded the Mayo Clinic, was an interesting one. That's a father and two sons, so two Williams and one Charles, and they together founded the Mayo Clinic. And of those three men, two were involved in Freemasonry, and they really, from kind of from nothing, they made this amazing clinic that really approached medicine in a new way, and they did it all with the desire to help people enjoy their best health. Those people, you may not think of them as Freemasons first, but they were Freemasons, along with the other things they were doing. And yeah, and it's a mix. When we were choosing when we were considering the people to include in the Hall of Fame, they did not have to be a Freemason of a certain involvement. They had to have been been involved in Freemasonry a little bit, taken some degrees, but not necessarily someone who held an office in the lodge or held a state office. That was not one of the criteria.
Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, for lack of a better term, they didn't have to be featured prominently on an American dollar bill. That wasn't something.
Well, that's a coincidence, but that happened. But yeah, we were really looking for people. One of the goals of the exhibition is to inspire visitors who come with these exciting stories of the different things that people have accomplished. And so there's a lot of different stories. And I've been working with this material for a while, and I do occasionally have a moment where I'm like, oh my goodness, that is a really fascinating thing, or that person moved beyond himself to help others. And I find that to be, inspirational.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. It's one of the things that drew me to Freemasonry in general. And I always joke with interested gentlemen, or that's what we refer to them, or prospects, people who are seeking to join a lodge, that you have to have a little bit of the history nerd in you to really appreciate Freemasonry, because we have so much of that in us, in our DNA and in our legacy. And it's not just on the famous Freemasons you've heard of, but once you get involved with your local lodge or your jurisdiction or your district, you're going to start unlocking the stories of some of the local heroes. And that's what really Freemasonry was all about. And some of them don't even have to travel back until like the 17 or 1800s. You could just be looking a couple generations back at your great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather if they were a member of the lodge. And those stories I always find appealing. I honestly could listen to historians talk about this topic all night long. I find it's so fascinating, and it must be something that is so exciting for you to get to work every day and not just be able to share these stories, but also learn a little bit from others who are coming to visit, or other people in this space that you can exchange these stories and details with.
Absolutely. We're always We're learning stuff all the time, and me especially. I've been working with with the topic of American Freemasonry for many years, but a day doesn't go by where I don't learn something new or find out that I had something not quite right. So we're always learning, and then there's also new information that emerges, and we do get great input for people who come in to donate material to the museum. Maybe there's a story that you can't believe, or doing research related to the different ways that we reach out to our Scottish Rite members in the Northern Masonic jurisdictions and general public. We write a blog, we have social media, we write articles and things like that. So we're to get towards those things, we are often doing some research, and there's surprises along the way, which makes it all very interesting.
Can you give me a sense of what the pace of or the experience is like going through the Scottish Rite Museum?
All right. Well, if you come to the museum, you can, everything is at the visitor's own pace. You can take a look at our library and archives. We have some materials on display there. We usually have a small exhibition in the reading room of the library, which will highlight material in the library and archives. And then we have two large exhibition galleries. One right now is the Masonic Hall of Fame, Extraordinary Freemasons in American History. And the other exhibition we have on view currently is called What's in a Portrait? And that looks at portraits in our collection and focuses on some of the signs and symbols you can see in them that speak to people's involvement in Freemasonry and fraternalism. And then throughout the building, we have some other displays of Masonic decorative arts. We have this great, big, enormous flag, which dates from the 1790s, that is on view. So there's a number of things that you can look at. We're free to the public. We accept donations, but people can come in for as long or as short as they like. There's no sort of investment there. We also have free parking. So we're trying to be as accessible as possible. And in terms of interactive elements, we have a few in the Masonic Hall of Fame, Extraordinary Freemasons in American History, partly because it was such a big story that we needed some extra help to tell it. So the inductees in the Hall of Fame are presented in kiosks where the visitor can choose what he or she would like to look at. So you can come to the first kiosk and say, okay, I would like to learn about Prince Hall. I'd like to learn about George Washington, or I could learn about Paul Revere here. And you pick the button and you start with the figure that you're most interested in. And as you see information on the screen, there's also a small display area that lights up, sort of focuses on one object that relates to the person whose story you're learning. And you can go through that material. And then we also have some simple interactive elements where one is a timeline where we're introducing other kinds of Masonic organizations and when they were founded, or important dates in Freemasonry. So going through that timeline, you can lift a door. It's very simple. And you can say, oh, okay, this is when the Eastern Star was established, or this is when this particular event happened. And that was a way of sort of getting more information in there, but also making it not overwhelming. Like, you don't have to do that if you're not, if that's not part of what you're wanting to do. And then because Freemasonry has had such a big impact on the built environment, we also have a big display that goes through I guess about 80 or so images of different Masonic buildings around the country. And they're drawn from our collection of historic postcards. So there's Masonic shrines and temples and kind of rural lodges and city lodges, so that visitors can get a sense quite quickly of the physical impact that Freemasonry had on communities. And likewise, we also wanted to include information about parades and processions. So we do have a very similar screen where there's a moving display of different images of parades and processions, and also some moving images of a Knights Templar parade. So that's a way to sort of bring these big things into a gallery where you can't, have a street or a whole lodge building. So we have a few interactive elements in the exhibition.
By the time that this episode airs in Hillary, we'll be looking at summer vacation travel plans, maybe even looking to the fall. I'm sure there is never a bad time to visit the museum or walk through the Hall of Fame. But are there any events that you know of that are coming up that we might want to plan our visit around?
Yeah, that's a great way to do it, I think. For people who are interested in the history of the Revolutionary War era, it's very easy to come to the museum, and then you can go into Lexington and see the Common where the first shots of the American Revolution were fired, and we're a hop skip from Concord, Massachusetts, which is where the other half of the battle took place, and then in between, like on your way there, is Minuteman National Historic Park, which is the Park Service's talk about this important American story, and they do a fantastic job. So it is very easy to spend a day going to all these places. And so in terms of time of year, I think spring and summer are good, although not when it's too hot. It's also really beautiful in the fall. And what was another? So in Massachusetts, we celebrate a holiday called Patriots Day, which is the day that the battle, this is the day that we commemorate when that battle took place. And if you are really interested in waking up early and seeing a reenactment of the battle, that's the day to come. And there are lots of pancake breakfasts and a big parade and all kinds of things going on in the Lexington and Concord area. Oh, I'm sorry, though, that's in April, of course, so it's no good for you in June.
Hillary Stelling, thank you so much for your time and joining us on the Craftsman Online podcast.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate your interest in the museum.
The Craftsman Online podcast is now sponsored by BricksMasons.com, our favorite destination for all of our Masonic shopping needs. Whether it's apparel for yourself or a cool gift idea for another brother, make BricksMasons.com your online marketplace where tradition meets innovation. Hey, this has been a jacket that's been popping up on my Instagram feed just about every day. I got to get one of these. It's the Master Mason Blue Lodge Bomber Jacket. I dig it because it's a cool look of style and symbolism. It's made out of polyester. It features a printed design showcasing the iconic Blue Lodge emblem with a variety of different color panels and styles. It's really cool looking. Get yours for those cool summer nights when you wish you had a light windbreaker or rain jacket. Visit BricksMasons.com and explore their extensive catalog. Elevate your Masonic experience with style and substance. Plus, Craftsman Online podcast listeners use promo code CRAFTSMAN, that's CRAFTSMEN, at checkout to enjoy free shipping with your first order. Hey, it's Worshipful Brother Michael Arce. This summer, you can join Freemasons around the country in celebrating the bicentennial anniversary of Brother Marquis de Lafayette's final goodwill tour of the United States. Visit us online at craftsmanonline.com to view our extensive Lafayette bicentennial calendar. Now, this is featuring some really cool parades, Masonic events like history talks with Masonic historian and author and friend of the Craftsman Online podcast, Brother Chris Ruley, also the New York Grand Lodge Lafayette Gala, the Lafayette French degree that'll be taking place in the city, and so much more. Plus, at craftsmanonline.com, you can share your lodge's celebration or event and add it to our calendar. See what's happening this summer as we roll out the red carpet for the celebration of Lafayette's bicentennial, and add your event at craftsmanonline.com. All right, so after that little comfort break, we're ready to hop from Lexington, Massachusetts, and travel down 95 to the Grand Lodge of New York in Manhattan. Very happy to bring him back on the Craftsman Online podcast. Very worshipful Michael LaRocco, who is the executive director of the Livingston Library for the Grand Lodge of New York. And also, you'll recognize his voice from our reading room. Welcome back to the podcast, Brother Michael.
Thank you, Brother Mike, Worshipful Mike, and thank you, everyone.
I consider myself lucky. I've known you for quite a few years now. We both work together with the Craftsman Online project. I think you have one of the best Masonic jobs out there. Tell us what it's like working in the Livingston Library, in the Grand Lodge building, and being surrounded by all of that New York State Masonic history.
When you walk around and you go through the different lodge rooms, even some of the staircases in the hallways. For instance, on the 6th floor, you got the Renaissance room on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, you have the Ionic room. And in the middle, you have this big conference room that used to be the library for the Grand Lodge, and it's got the huge gold statue of George Washington. And before you even get in that room, just the dome ceiling above the beginning of the entrance is pretty spectacular. So I've been there about a year and a half now, and I have to say, it never gets old. The beauty of the craftsmanship, and just the walls have secrets, and the walls have stories. And the personality of the Grand Lodge, it's kind of like its own little secret in New York, in Manhattan. You know, there's like almost nothing that's really decorated and crafted like that. And you don't have to be a Mason to appreciate it. Matter of fact, a lot of people that walk through the door and take the tours are not Masons, and they are just as interested and fascinated as you know, as astute Masons who've drinking the Kool-Aid like you and I.
Yeah, no, I was lucky enough to kind of get a penny tour after the Grand Lodge of New York's Unity Day earlier this year, and you were able to, you know, show us some really cool Knights Templar artifacts that you had found that kind of supported the documentation of the existence of the Templar and the edict that came from the Pope at that time. And I remember my least favorite part of the tour was that we only got a few minutes with you in that room, because I felt like we could have talked about that for hours. But this is one of the whole purposes of this particular episode. We started with Hillary Stelling from the Scottish Rite Northern Masonic Jurisdiction Museum in Lexington, Massachusetts. And we want to kind of give brothers and lodges, like, if you're in the Northeast and you're looking for something to do this summer, if you had literally 1 hour, what is something that you would want to do with that 1 hour in the Grand Lodge building and the Livingston Library?
If I had 1 hour, I would split it between going to see the individual lodge rooms, including the Grand Lodge room, and I would come to the library, and I would ask that you kind of already have the answer to this question of what interests you the most, so we can maybe prepare an artifact or a book that we find in the back that's not readily accessible, because 99% of the treasure that we have of the books and the artifacts is in the back. It's not, you know, obviously we don't have a full-scale museum where we could put all our artifacts. So trying to find what you might be interested in and connecting it to our memory in our database of beautiful artifacts and books, that's what we'd want. We want to find something. So my job is to try to find what you're interested in and show it to you, and maybe tell you the story about it. You know, each artifact has a story, and I think that's what makes it personal and interesting.
And we're going to share the links for brothers or just people that have an interest in Freemasonry that want to pop up to Manhattan or over to Manhattan or are in the city and want to check this out now or in the summertime. It's very easy. You are open for walk-ins, but you do ask if people could make a reservation, as you said, kind of give you the heads up on what they're interested in seeing. You can do all of this through the Grand Lodge website. Don't worry with the Livingston Library.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. Let me be clear that I don't want anyone to feel hesitant about coming in. You can pop in. Walk-ins are very welcome. Just if you're interested in doing serious research, you would have to let us know in advance so we could pull the material for you.
Kind of key.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, everything that we have, every artifact and every book that we have is open to the public. We just don't let you borrow any books unless you signed up for the reading course and you're a Mason. Even enter the printer.
We'll have all the links so that you can make this visit and get this information in the show notes for this episode. So you had talked about if someone has an interest in coming in to, you know, kindly they give you the heads up. I'm curious, you're in the Livingston Library and Museum, which is home to, as you mentioned, one of the largest collections in the world of Masonic books, artifacts, and memorabilia. It's been around for over 175 years. What was the first item that you just had to see when you became director? And is it the same item that you like to show to visitors? It's like your most favorite thing at the museum.
I'd like to show what I think might be most interesting to them. But the thing that I wanted to see, the first thing I wanted to see of a major interest, you had mentioned it before, it's the Processus Contra Templioris. It's the transcript of the actual trials of the Templars, the original interrogations of the first 72 Templar, medieval Knights Templar that were investigated, along with the Chinon parchment, which exonerated them from heresy, which we didn't find until 2001. And then in 2007, the Pope revealed that, yeah, we're sorry. We just realized that this document was misfiled for the last 400 years. You know, it wasn't nefarious because they knew about it for the first 300 years. But after much research, they found out that the Pope did indeed exonerate the Templars of heresy. So they were guilty of some things, but not heresy. And so we have a copy of that. And so what happened is the Vatican made 799 facsimiles along with the secret Vatican archive seal, and they put it out. They sold it. And so 2008, the director at the time purchased it. And this is not an admonition that Freemasonry comes from the medieval Knights Templar, nor the opinion of the Grand Lodge of New York or the library, but it is a terribly interesting subject to Masons, and so we thought it was worthwhile to purchase it. And so we have one of the copies.
Yeah, and that was the thing where I'm staring at this and you're pointing and showing and giving a quick explanation about it, and I was like, wow, like it really opened my eyes to that part of history in Freemasonry. And for sure, even from an entered apprentice to just someone who has a casual interest in Freemasonry, definitely for sure something that you would appreciate seeing. New York Freemasons, you kind of mentioned, they have so many opportunities that don't exist in other grand jurisdictions. You talked about this, and I want to kind of expand on the Livingston Library reading course. I benefited from this. I took a couple courses and got the certifications during my time as living in New York State. What can you tell us about the reading program? And do you have a favorite course that you like reading about?
Okay, so the reading program is free. You just have to get the books back to us. You could start by just going online, filling out the PDF. It's editable online, and then emailing it to us and start to go. It's available to entered apprentices as well for when you first become a Mason. And you don't actually have to start with course number 1. Most people don't realize that. You don't have to start with the course. And so you look online, look at the courses, see what you want to start with first. Probably my favorite is, the 8th course, Through the Inner Door, which is the esoteric one. And I want to be clear that I'm not all esoteric. It's definitely an important part for me, but it is not, my entire interest. But the books there are very, very, very interesting. You got the Arcana of Freemasonry, the Golden Builders, which is a classic, the Lost Keys of Freemasonry, which was a topic of one of our reading room in the Craftsman Online. The Rosicrucians by Christopher McIntosh, and the Book of Words by Albert Pike. So these really, really dig deep into the esoteric nature of Freemasonry, and the must-reads for anyone that's interested in that.
It's funny you talk about that particular course because that is where I started. When I finally became a Master Mason and could use this benefit, this resource from the Grand Lodge of New York. As you mentioned, like the first couple of courses are kind of backed up because everybody becomes a Master Mason and they start there at number 1. So I think I started at course 8, and I remember getting a certificate from our district deputy Grand Master that year. And everybody in the lodge was looking around. They're like, wow, he must be reading these books really fast. No, just kind of jumped ahead. But the other thing is when you talk about the loaner program that exists with these books, I was actually more careful with these books than any book that I would have ever checked out from a school or a county or community library, because I understood the value they had, not just with the cost, but also with who the book belonged to, and sharing that light and that knowledge with the next brother that was going to check it out. But it was really simple. The book would come to the house, you'd read it, and then when you're done, you package it back up. I think I paid for postage, sent it back to the museum, and then bang, the next book came right to me. It was super easy.
Like as of about 6 years ago, Grandmaster Bill Sordone opened it up to entered apprentices and above too. So now, a lot of people like you and I had to wait to a Master Mason to get it. Also, we have access to a lot more too than just a reading course. If you go on to, you could go directly to search our entire catalog on the website and look for subjects or authors to try to find books. And if there's more than one copy, it tells you on the website there's more than one copy. And if it's less than 100 years old, we will lend it to you. Not that the book was published 100 years ago, that the very book itself is less than 100 years. And so there are very, very rare books. There are thousands. We have over 60,000 books. There's literally thousands and thousands of books that people don't even know about, that are fascinating, that are important to research, that you can search. And you know what? If we can't lend it to you, we can maybe scan a chapter or whatever the copyright allows us to, or you could come in and read it and take your own pictures to do research on it. We also have the American Lodge of Research, all the articles written, published on there, even on Odillo, the digital content that we have. So if you're looking for a program for your lodge, you have a point of interest that has to do with American history, you go on their website, look it up, and then you could go to Odillo get the article, or if you can't find it, you could ask me or Alex in the library, and we'll scan it for you and send it out to you. Maybe it's a nice program for your lodge. We also have the national version too, Ars Quattro Coronata, the International Lodge of Research. So there's a lot that most people do not know about that they have access to.
For the bookworms that are like, okay, books, I heard books. Don't worry, we're going to have the link to the reading program, and especially how you can take advantage of that now as a Mason with the Grand Lodge of New York. So a fun question, you can probably tell, I lived in New York for a long amount of time, would never consider myself a New Yorker. I lived in upstate New York. You can tell Michael lives in downstate. He's got the authentic accent. If you were to spend a day in the city around the Grand Lodge building in Manhattan, can you walk us through what a summer day, what your ideal day trip to visit the city would look like?
We're going to have that whole program, and there will be very, very shortly, along with Lee Justo, I think you know Lee, will be outlining a whole walking tour of Masonic sites, ranging from Central Park to down the block from Grand Lodge. And so, I mean, you're in Chelsea, Manhattan, so you can't throw a stone far enough to not hit a really good restaurant to go to. There's that famous place, Italy, on the corner. You got Madison Square Park right on Fifth Avenue on the other corner. And so if you can't find something to do, come to my office and I'll definitely tell you a whole bunch of stuff. You could also run over to the Brooklyn side and see one of the greatest views of Manhattan from the Brooklyn Promenade. There's just so much to do in Manhattan. I wouldn't even know how to stop. But I do want to highlight that very soon. And I'm sure it'll be a program that's going to be highlighted on Craftsman Online, the walking tour.
Nice. Yeah, I would look forward to that. I know the few times that I've gotten to visit the Grand Lodge building is usually for a Masonic event or a Grand Lodge session. And I get to step out a little bit further. So I remember getting to see Cleopatra's Needle for the first time in Central Park and taking a ton of pictures of that and then reading everything about it. I think I even that was the first time I went to the Livingston Library to learn more about that and see some of the pictures from the brothers at that time when they were bringing it off the boat and, erecting that in Central Park.
Yep, that's right. So, to me, the definition of artifact is in the two parts of the name. A piece of a fact that's represented by a piece of art. We have gotten a lot of artifacts from various parts of the country because we were one of the earlier museum libraries, Masonic museum libraries. And so I think that there's a story to be told in this, is that, to start off with, the Grand Lodge of New York received that charter in 1781 from England, from the same brothers we were at war with during the Revolutionary War. What that means to me is that the bonds of this fraternity transcend the most extreme of human conflicts, war. We have the banner from the Grand Lodge of the Republic of Texas from before it was a state. We also have possibly the only solid proof that Santa Anna was a Freemason. It's a certificate issued to him by the Scottish Rite. And so we know that the 4 commandos of the Texan Army were Masons, and we also have proof, and possibly the only solid proof, Santa Anna, who was the leader of the army in Mexico against the Texans, as well as the 4th-time president of Mexico, was a Mason as well. So we have these artifacts. We also have artifacts from Lafayette, from George Washington, obviously also. And we also have an apron and collar given to Simone Bolivar, all right? So what we're saying is that we literally have artifacts that bear testimony that the 6 great revolutions, and history deems them as great, is because they took power from tyrants and gave them to the people, were all Freemasons behind it. The American Revolution, the French, Italy, Hungary, South America, and Mexico. All of them were Freemasons behind it. And so we literally have the artifacts to prove that Freemasonry has had such a valuable contribution to modern society and to human development.
I remember you making that point, and really it stuck with me during the 5 to 10 minutes that I got with you at the Livingston Library. And it's interesting because it has helped me evolve the answer to what are Freemasons and what is Freemasons. And when you think about, the word free and masonry and putting those all together, but, the group of like-minded men, but just coming together for that freedom, that pursuit of happiness that our country is founded on, that liberty, that independence. And it's just amazing to know that if a brother wants to see this, all they have to do is ask. Just like being a Mason, you just ask and they'll have the chance to see it right there and take pictures of it. It's amazing.
Or you could have me do a lodge presentation and come to your lodge in New York.
Very worshipful Michael LaRocco. Always a good time. You will hear his voice again on the next installment of the Craftsman Online Reading Room. We'll make sure to have a link on how you can be a part of that program coming up soon in our show notes. But for now, thank you so much for giving us a tour ahead of summer for the Grand Lodge of New York.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Well, we got home just in time. I hope you've enjoyed our little Masonic road trip this summer, and it's inspired you to explore Masonic education around the Northeast or even just in your area. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow the Craftsman Online Podcast on Spotify or hit that subscribe button on Apple Podcasts. This is Worshipful Brother Michael Arce. Appreciate our time again together this week. Until next time, let peace and harmony prevail.